Hi, everybody. This is Jon Toker from Biz Insider. I have another special guest here with me today, Stephen Pigozzo. Hey, Stephen, how are you doing today?
Very good, John. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
It's amazing. I'm doing great. Very happy to have you on the show. You're someone I've been watching and following on LinkedIn for a while now, and see all the good work. And it's absolute pleasure to have someone like you on the show. Uh, for our audience, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, why people should be tuning into this chat today?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the very kind intro. Yeah, it's been a long while. I guess part of my reason for um, having a fair footprint, we'll say, on LinkedIn is because of the work I do with dealerships on their 180 system. 180 was a CRM tool that I was actually one of the very first users of back in March of 2002. It was developed by my general manager, AJ Mueller, back at BK Motors in Waterloo, Ontario. And when Mini opened, it was a chance for him to display the software, particularly to BMW Group Canada as well. And he showed it to me and he said, Stephen, you're fresh out of university. Like, you like tech. What do you think of this? And, I immediately, after an afternoon of using it, I was like, you owe me $10 for the calendar I just bought because I don't need it anymore. And that was sort of like the gestation period. And I remember back, using our satellite internet connection to 180 back in '02. That was pretty fashion forward. And I have to say, if you thought you were waiting for a quote to calculate today, back then it was a little bit more interesting. But with the works, with all the sort of bugs, worked out, it was basically a stepped process, and it grew and grew. I eventually started working for the company. I think it was January of '05, and we were doing installs across Canada. And around 2011, I went on my own to do my own consulting. By that time, the ecosystem of 180 had grown so large that although we have a support line, one of the things that I noticed immediately was whether we had a support call line or not, and how great the people were at the other end. If you don't know the question to ask, you're not going to get the help you need, that you don't even know you need, so to speak. And that's where the consulting or the assessment comes in. As I always like to say, 180 is one big calculator. You shouldn't argue over how it works. Learn where the categories are, learn where all the filters are, and you basically have a blockchain of information to your customers, either coming in from service, depending on your level of 180 usage and DMS compatibility. Service customers who come in, VIN gets checked with your database. You can check that VIN and pair it. So if you sold a car 8 years ago on 180 and someone sold it privately, and then that other new customer comes into your inventory with that car, the VIN gets checked and the file can be merged. Very cool. You come into the store as a customer, you look on the web, you get into the system in any way from sale to delivery to maturity, it's all tracked throughout. So within all of that, there's accountability. And that's the part that makes 180 a little bit difficult, because over 20 years of development and 4 million lines of code, I think the surface of it, although I like to say looks like an E39 BMW M5, it still runs really great. It just doesn't look so new, because a lot of the software and a lot of the stuff that was added in the last few years was mostly due to third-party integration. So you don't get to see it get cleaned up. It unfortunately still looks the same way it did 20 years ago, but it's still a very, very valid process. And that's why so many of my clients keep using me for rehire, like new hire training, or just to kind of revamp or take a look at their software. Because when you organize it properly, 180 will allow you to do pretty much everything you need to do within a car dealership from start to finish.
That's a really good, introduction. But let's talk about something more important than 180.
What's
I
that?
think your book. Can you
My
talk
book,
about your
yes.
book a little bit?
Yeah, well, actually, the book I just published recently. It's self-published, so nothing too crazy to celebrate as far as that's concerned. But the reason why I did it was I think after 10 years of self-employment and helping people with CRM systems, it kind of became known to me, and I probably should have done a better job of this while I was doing training, was the amount of sales training I do with team members. And a lot of my clients, I think, maybe perceive me as mostly a CRM person. But organizing the CRM gives us the process and accountability we need. This is just simply salespersonship, as I like to say. What I did to write the book was take all of my process guides that I have for my clients, particularly the salespeople, and just organize them into a short, I guess you could say it was probably only about 5 or 10 pages worth, But each stipulation was directed to 180 software. But basically what I did was break down each and every step in the sales process, which is already laid out in the system, but do it in a verbal format so that any salesperson can open up the book, start reading, and completely understand that the book is only about 50 or 60 pages, because I know most salespeople wouldn't want to read a 300-page book, nor would I. But I like to get to the point right away with all the things you could be doing from day to day. And I basically took the book from, my own perspective as, if I'm going to sit down at a car dealership and I'm a salesperson and I have no one to speak to today, what can I do? How can I data mine? How can I find information about a customer? How can I meet a new customer, perhaps going into service? What am I doing with my current clientele? How often have I followed them up? How am I following them up? All that sort of stuff, because it's all the little details that make the personal experience the one that helps us move more product and obviously sell more vehicles and make more money.
So if someone brand new buys your book and goes in the car business, do you think that's going to really help them to sell more cars?
Yeah, absolutely. Sales is really just process. Much like one of my favorite athletes of all time is Tom Brady. I used to play quarterback, and I played far too long, enough to hurt my back and probably take it a little bit easier, especially in my 20s and 30s. But one of the things I loved hearing him in a recent interview with Howard Stern, and the number of times he said the word process really made me feel great, because I talk about process all the time. Process is not the sexiest conversation, as I always say, and process doesn't care about your feelings. Even a bad process works. I've seen bad processes. They're kind of inefficient. The file goes back and forth from sale to delivery. The file changes hands 14, 15 times, completely unnecessary, but it's followed. And when it's followed, it works. And that's process. The unfortunate part, though, is that a lot of people don't really focus too much on process. And I always use the same example with new salespeople, and I give them, a little bit of a breadth of knowledge of where I'm coming from. So in the last 15 years, I've done training across Canada at about 200 different stores. I've trained salespeople and managers. I've trained top salespeople. I've trained new hires. In all my entire career, I can absolutely say 100%. If you're new to the car business and you have just a modicum of ability and drive to follow a process that's given to you, perhaps something in my book, or perhaps even just given by your manager to actually say, no, call these customers, say this, 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 and this, that can get you started. But ultimately, anybody who's in the car business has to stop selling their brand and start solving the solution for their customer. Once they start doing that, then they're off and running. And new hires tend to do that, because they don't understand the sales process. They're learning the sale with the customer. They're experiencing it with the customer. And that's why so many top salespeople might not know all the product information you think they would know, but they know their customers really, really well. And that's what allows them to sell.
Yeah, I can't agree with more with that statement, that very successful salespeople are very good at relationship management than knowing the product itself.
100%.
Because at the end of the day, knowing you're selling a BMW, it's an M engine made in this particular state in Germany, that doesn't really mean a lot unless you really understand that customer's needs.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I usually will be sitting sometimes with a new hire. I'll be like, into cars? They go, yeah. I'm like, don't be. And they're like, what? And I'm like, because being into cars is great, but it's for that customer. What if I had a customer who swore a lot, I'd probably start swearing just because I'm going to start to listen and hear where their hot button issues are. I think what you get from something like a 180 process, or even just like a sales process, doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't matter who they are. Those top salespeople at a dealership, whether they use 180 or whether the dealership has a software system or not, they'll always be the top people, because what they end up doing is following a process and adhering to it. And I have to do the same for myself. I'm self-employed. I have to reach out to people. If they don't get back to me, sometimes I just have to understand that's not now. I'll try them again. That's the grind of the business, hence the book name, Buy or Die, from the old sales axiom of you contact the customer until they buy or they die, which is maybe a little bit on the harsh side, but it makes a good title. So that's why I chose it.
It's definitely a catchy title for sure. I'm sure your book is selling pretty well.
Actually, I'm very shocked. I'm surprised at how many people have bought the book. It's kind of flattering, and I might as well say it here too. So if you buy the book, send me a note with the proof of purchase if you're a salesperson, and I'm more than happy to do some 180 training for free for you, or talk to you about the book. My information's all in the book. It's not like it's hard to find me. So that's also why I left. I thought the book would be a good leave behind, because I always tell managers, I'm not going to tell you how to sell cars or do your job. I just want to take everything that you do at your business and make it work through your 180 system. So now you have accountability. The thing about all of that is that I think the impression is that when a consultant comes in, they're going to like tell you how to do everything. And it's just like, no. I'm just going to show you where you probably are doing something in your software system. Last week, it was printing a bill of sale at time of deposit. Well, don't print the bill of sale. Then the system's going to ask you for a delivery because it's actually thinking you're delivering the car today, but you're not. The offer's just fine. Sign the offer and then create the bill of sale later. But in our business, we have so much vernacular. And if you call and ask somebody at a software system, where do you print the bill of sale? They'll tell you. But if you ask the consultant, they say, why are you printing it? That's the question. I'm going to ask you a question. Why are you printing it? Oh, we have a deposit we're taking from the customer. Well, then print the offer with the front and back page. And you're good. It's all legally binding. You can read the statement down below. That type of process stuff really slows a dealership down when you kind of multiply it from start to finish. And then when you top it all off, if you have never really had the right training and you don't know how to categorize anything and you don't know how the system organizes itself, well, then how do you organize it? And as a consultant, I've been through all the errors and omissions from back in the day when we built the system. So I happen to know a lot of that stuff, and getting teams organized. Marie Kondoing their 180 is pretty much what I end up doing.
So one thing I never be able to figure it out in 180 system was how to print a bill of sale for lease deals.
That's a good one. Yeah. So the interesting thing about our business is what people consider to be paperwork at the right time, and generally what we consider in Canada to be paperwork. So as for instance, there's no such thing on a lease. You would be printing other pages in 180. If you sell a car at a 180 dealer, if you have a 180 system, you can sell any vehicle any way: fleet, wholesale, retail. Within that, you can sell to businesses or customers. The taxable incentives are all laid out for you, which is quite robust in the system. That doesn't mean the user is going to select the right item, right? And that inherently is where, if you only know what you know because someone told you, who was told by someone else, after you get down to it, unfortunately, the information breakdown gets to be quite severe. And with a system like 180, where you have communication between service departments, part department, POs, all that sort of stuff, I'm the type of person to say, oh, your tint guy, he comes into the dealership. Well, why don't we put him in 180 so you can send him a PO? That way you don't have to email him all the time. Oh, never thought of that. You wouldn't want to create a user, right? But in 180, you can create a user just to be in the dropdown so you can send them an internal PO. That's the way I would run it, because it's quick, it's easy, and I have accountability at my dealership. So those are the little details that when you start to drill down with teams, they go, oh my God, there's a lot here that allows us to keep track of one another. Along with the sales team members, you create an appointment, CC it to a manager. And if you don't have a manager available for your appointment and you need someone to take a look at the trade appraisal, but you didn't book it or let them know, don't complain. It's a two-way street.
My favorite thing is when it's salespeople or managers desking deals and they start adding things on the accessories section, but they just like put it manually without setting up the accessories.
Yeah.
And then you close the deal and you can't commission the deal. Becomes a nightmare.
It definitely can. And whether you're using the proper coding to make it a cost of sale or cost of business, when you drill into the process of sale and delivery and synchronization, which is only in 180, which basically takes the vehicle quote information and pastes it to the stock card. Well, if you're an administrator and you don't know that, you go make a change to the stock card, and then as soon as we synchronize the deal, it wipes out whatever you did on the stock card. So that can get a little bit confusing. And believe me, when I was doing training at stores and we were waiting for them to get the internet before we arrived, a lot of the training I was doing back 15 years ago really was, I'll call it PC training, because a lot of management teams were not used to the level of software that we were now presenting into a process. Nowadays, most sales managers have far too many logins, far too many software to even think about managing a lot of the systems that are, or systems or processes we can say that are in 180. And that's probably our biggest problem in the business today. You see anyone start in a managerial role and see the list of logins that they have and things they're supposed to cover. It's pretty phenomenal. And at the same time, we don't have enough knowledge to say, oh, actually, if no one enters a customer, you'll develop duplicates, just because a customer can get a quote from someone on the floor and then go online, become a third-party sales lead, and end up in your system as a second party. So, I mean, that's the software that we have today. And it's a big ecosystem that I don't think a lot of people who control it understand how to what breadth it actually goes. If you're at a store that has 180 in CDK or 180 in Reynolds, so you have your CRM and your DMS, you should be able to open up My Business, click on appointments, or click on service appointments, click on a customer, top left-hand corner, notice that they're a customer, but they're attached to SVC. SVC is a service lead, but why do they have a C beside their name? That's a customer. Look down. Oh, they were sold by someone 12 years ago. Why don't we introduce them to one of our sales team members? This is a service customer who services 4 vehicles here. 4 vehicles. We've never sold them a car before. They receive every one of our email transmissions and have never unsubscribed. Gee, maybe I should call that client. If you can't find that in your 180 system, then you got to learn how to use it better, because it will help you do your business better. And nowadays, with so much competition and so much online business, we really have to find those little holes in our system. We can't be reactionary. As we were talking before we even started this conversation, you always know how organized a team is or a person is when you can have a 30 to 1 hour conversation about process and working with them and they're not interrupted. That's very hard nowadays. So usually most teams are very reactionary, and 180 allows them to not be reactionary, which is pretty great.
You know, one interesting thing about you is that, you know, this is a great topic, by the way, which I'm going to revisit again.
Yeah, for sure.
Before I just jump right into this kind of stuff, I like to introduce, like, let our audience know that, you know, if they Google your name, it comes up that you're an actor.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit, like that acting career and all that stuff?
Well, the consulting is not as busy as you think, because I think social media helps perpetuate the idea that I'm everywhere at every time, but that's not the case. So I have a lot of free time. Working as an actor, it was just always a passion of mine. But for a lot of people who don't know me, they don't know I'm from Northern Ontario, from Sudbury, Ontario. I'm actually a big hunter and fisherman as well, but I don't look that part usually on Instagram. And then the whole acting stuff, I'm pointing to this poster here, which you commented on before we got started. So this is a sales incentive poster. And for those people who love cinema out there, you'll notice it says sales incentive. First prize, the ultimate in luxury, a Cadillac Eldorado. Second prize, a deluxe set of steak knives. That is from Glengarry Glen Ross. It was one of my favorite films.
Well, the third prize.
It's a great play. Pardon me? Oh, the third prize is you're fired. Sorry, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, the third prize is you're fired. So hence buy or die. But as well, I had the very much. I lived in England for 2 years, and I had the luck of doing that play at the play at Questers Theatre, and I played the part that a lot of people would recognize from the movie, the part that Kevin Spacey played called Williamson. He was the office manager who handled the leads, which was hilarious because I just handled leads yesterday for a team. So with the acting stuff, I mean, it's sort of like something I do that I enjoy. Created a short film with my friends because I wanted to, and just wanted to work on a project from start to finish. My business, was going well, and I just thought, well, if I create the Tuesday test drive, I can create a short film, or vice versa. And just trying to better understand content creation and how I come across on camera and all that sort of stuff. I guess that's something that, as one female manager put to me a while back when she realized I was also an actor, she said, you're an actor. That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense because you're a really great trainer. You must think we're all actors, or something like to that effect, like all the world's a stage. And I said, well, on the sales floor, that's a very good way of looking at it, because for someone like myself who's been in both environments, they're both very competitive. They're both very difficult. They're both ones that you have to make sure that you understand what you're doing, that you study. No one's going to help you do it. You do it yourself. And how do you do it? You do it amongst groups. Team members tend to kind of pair up or have friends amongst the team that they kind of share some work. That's always the way it is. And when you have a bad day in sales, you don't wear that bad day on your face. Everybody knows that. And when you do, it's noticeable. It's noticeable to your customers. So when you have that terrible, terrible evening, or for a lot of people out there, I don't have kids. I look fresh-faced when I come in because I don't have kids and I'm single and I just worked out, and hey, my day is going to start when my day starts. Not a lot of people have that kind of control. And if you don't start controlling your own process day to day, how do you expect to control, the rest of your day? So whether it's acting or whether it's consulting, the acting stuff is just a joy for me to do most times. And thankfully, I don't need to do it to sort of pay the rent. So I also get to have a great agent who gets me great stuff to kick at the can. So anyway, just always something I like doing, and yeah, it's there, it pays. So yeah.
That's really nice stuff. And you're absolutely right in terms of, the customer there is going to spend 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, $80,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is not there to listen to your, attitude or your issues, or they don't
Yeah,
care about.
absolutely.
They want the experience. And the last thing you need to do that is bring that, bring that experience from your home that you're experiencing, and let customers feel that. And it's not really fair for the client too. And it's all about that customer, how can you treat them nicer? And if you can't do it, it's better you take the day off rather than go to work or do some admin work, prepare your paperwork
Absolutely.
or whatever you need to do it. Don't talk to customers that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you have downtime, not a bad time to do social media. Downtime is something that doesn't really exist in the car business as well, for the most part. If you're sitting at your desk as a salesperson today, listening to this, and you're like, I don't have any follow-ups, I don't have any appointments, what can I do? Well, in the very first moment, I would say, if your manager's free, go and ask them what you could do. If you don't like the answer you get, try another manager. If you still don't like the answer you get, try doing something yourself. Sometimes forgiveness is easier than permission. And in the car business, if you want to excel, today, it's a good time to excel. Floors are a little bit on the light side. Certain salespeople have moved on through COVID. It's changed the floor a lot. I mean, we see new car salespeople, people new to the car business doing 40 deliveries in their second month. Kind of gives you an idea what the market is like. The market today is very different than it was 20 years ago. 180 is treated differently than it was 20 years ago. I wouldn't do email campaigns in 180, though everyone still tries to do them. I would do letter campaigns for lease renewals and phone campaigns. A phone campaign, not a text. Go to that salesperson because you sold the car and now you call the customer. There's 18 months left on the lease. But unfortunately, if we don't know how to manage that information or question the information in the sales reps my business or organize the data, how do we see it? We're blind to it. But yet I can walk into any of the 1,000 stores in Canada that use 180 and show them all of this information. That's just simply knowledge of a calculator. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the business is being done a lot different than 3 years ago, right? And 3 years is not that far. So why don't you talk about that a little bit? Like, what do you see when you go to dealers now? Like, where do you think the biggest, because what we used to say that the gross profit forgives all the sins in a car dealership, right? Now the gross profits are through the roof. What processes do you think fall down in dealerships that it's going to be an issue when things start to go back to normal?
The same issues that were there before, pretty much. Usually it has to do with movement within the dealership showroom floor. Everybody knows in the business, people move on. Whether it's within the dealership or to other stores, other rooftops within the group, sure, but also completely different brands. They move on. The way in which we use software today is very interesting because software now has allowed everyone to kind of be their own boss. And as I was talking with a few teams this week, and I had a very busy couple of weeks with very different teams from very different brands, yet everyone had the exact same CRM issues, which was really just, lack of training, lack of knowledge. Really simple. Organize it all. What do you want to do? Where do these lease renewals go? Do you have a portfolio manager? Let's divide up all the information. Okay, get rid of that Excel document, get rid of that Excel document. You're trying to focus the team on all the data that they can find in this one system. And I'm focusing on one system and one system only for the most part. Yet they have 24 others to check. Yet they add on a third-party e-lead source. And for some reason, we buy an e-lead source that allows the customer to not put in a name, a phone number, an email, nothing. So really, all you have is a Tinder app to talk to that customer. And if they want to hang up, they hang up. Okay, great. That's awesome. Why do we buy that? I've made very few notes today, as I said before we got started, because I went for a workout. It's always a good way for me to kind of like break down my day and think about things. And I thought, why am I making notes? I've been doing this for 20 years. I know exactly what I have to say. And I always back up what I say, particularly in 180. It's just ones and zeros. That's why I always like to say, let's not argue over it. It's a calculator. It's like picking up a calculator by Texas Instruments, putting in a number and say, does anyone want to verify that? You want to go to Google and check it out? Because again, we're just categorizing things. But when we started, let's say when I started doing training in 2005, a lot less systems and smartphones weren't around. So I could do a training session and go 2 hours with, let's say, sales managers and business managers to show them the process flow in 180. Today, it's hard to get people to even sit for more than 5 or 10 minutes before their phone does something. They look at it and walk out. Salespeople, managers, GMs, it doesn't matter. So now, because so many teams are conglomerates, we'll say, just to use the term, they're under ownership by larger groups, the decision-making has changed. So when we got on our first call and we just chatted as colleagues, you asked me, who do you talk to when you do an assessment? And I said, I always try to talk to the owner. But so many places I go, there is no owner, so to speak. So what I do is, with any client, I treat 180 the way I would treat it if this were my store. That's the way I always look at it. What's best for the store, for me as the owner of the software, as the owner of the system. But because we don't have ownership, we now have broken we'll say the pyramid of what makes 180 work. 180 works because an owner or a GM takes a look at like 4 or 5 things in 180. Delivery schedule, that it's up to date and running from today's date and time. Exactly today's date and time. Now, your delivery process is pretty clean. Don't even have to look too much further. You can look at your ticker, see what's coming up. You can look at your email capture rate. You can check your inventory on 2 or 3 clicks. Other than that, you can check some gross profits. All of those things, though, generally are not looked at. The information is asked for, and many times, because it's not accurate, because they're not following a process, they'll start an Excel document. And that's how most teams end up working. The unfortunate part is that as we've moved forward into 2015 and 20, we've shifted the management teams around, in that now we have managers who handle software really well. But then I find that we have a limited number of people who do really great sales process and see the importance of sales process in an environment that still is commission sales. So now we see some teams getting away from commission sales and going into like a process flow, more akin to something like a future shop, where you can kind of like pick and choose and take away your vehicle, all with one person, all in one sort of process. So again, any process works if you follow it. It's just a matter of how we're doing it. And how we're doing it today is a real hodgepodge of things. We were joking the last time we spoke about how so many managers will post the success of salespeople on their LinkedIn. And I don't know why they do that, because it's a great way to advertise how great one of your salespeople is doing, and other teams can see those. I don't know why you do that. To me, that's not a great idea. I advertise on LinkedIn all the time, but that's because I see dealerships on LinkedIn. I'm not going to do much on Instagram. If you follow my Instagram, you're going to see a lot of hobby stuff, food, and some other things, a lot of funny family members. Most of my work that I do on LinkedIn. And so I think we have a hodgepodge of understanding of CRM systems, a hodgepodge of understandings of sales process and what sales process actually means, which really comes down to accountability. And then moving forward, what we're doing in the future with our software, because so many teams, I talk to them about 180 does, and they probably have bought another software to do something 180 already does. So again, like the comprehension levels are kind of like, it depends on who you're talking to and how much experience they have to have these discussions. And like your former, I think it was a couple shows ago, it was a great talk. But one of the things that really stood out to me and stopped me from sipping my coffee was nobody is an expert. I heard that and I was just like, whoa, nobody is an expert on everything. But after 20 years of installs in one software system, I can definitely say I'm an expert. There's other experts within the company, but it's a very large company, so I understand how information ends up being a bit fragmented. When you talk to me, I'm talking about you and your team and your store and your process, and we can drill down and get right to the nitty gritty, which is great. I just find a lot of times we don't have the top-down process in place for me to effectively make change. I'll show you how to create appointments, but who's going to follow up the appointments? I'll show you how to clean up your CRM system. Who's going to clean up the CRM daily? 180 it'll grow errors like mold. They won't stop your system from running, but you'll have thousands of people in your service department that haven't migrated over to your sales and your magnet and all your other databases because you haven't merged it. And the system can't do that for you. And I just don't see how in the future we're just going to make that all possible because it's in one space in the cloud. You're still going to have the same problem because you still don't have process and you still don't have people. So I don't see that getting cleared up by software.
But don't you think that's good for your business?
It is, absolutely. But the problem, though, is, and here comes the problem, is that opinion now today, it means more than fact. And we can see it everywhere. I know that's a very broad statement to make, but as a psych soc major in university and someone who finds social media and media in general laments the loss of long form media, unless you're picking up automotive news, anything you find on LinkedIn is a cut and paste of a cut and paste of a cut and paste. And then we end up with these large articles from kind of well-respected, I guess you could say, sources that talk about car dealerships closing in 10 years, stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, really? Like, you're sure, okay. And I know there are people in the business that scan that information and get involved. I don't. I just choose to create my own content on LinkedIn. I like to follow my clients. I like to see what they're doing, but I'll be the first to tell them I really shouldn't see you on LinkedIn. I love that you follow me and stuff, but most of the time on LinkedIn as teams, I think they should be focusing more on social media to get the population, to get the populace looking, not people within your business. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But again, that just goes to process and placement.
Like we see these controversial titles saying, rest in peace to the car dealerships. They're going to be out of business and all that nonsense.
Yeah, and I didn't know if you knew this, but no car dealership offers a good cup of coffee. I don't know if you knew that, but and
all dealerships have coffees, right?
They're I know. I don't know where. In 200 dealers across Canada, in 20 years, I still know the 2 dealers who have a bad cup of coffee. But I would say 99.9%. I think I've had Starbucks coffee 5 times in this last couple of weeks.
The machine.
The machine dispense, and it's fantastic. Yeah. So at any rate, I think a lot of that again goes down to process and people, and everyone's impression of a store is going to be based on whom they met. And if you happen to meet the newest, greenest person, and funnily enough, your bad experience started in a way that we didn't even want as car salespeople or managers. You got on a portal and you started asking questions. I asked my accountant brother-in-law one time, I said, would you imagine trying to do assessment with a client over text? And he said, no, I'd never do that. I'm like, well, one of my problems that I have is I can't even give people free assessments. I offer a free assessment because, I could probably guess that the 5 things we'll work on, they're big things because most dealers have those issues and because they're kind of ignored in 180. And by the way, for those people who are wondering why they're ignored, the reason they're ignored is most people don't understand how to set up the user maintenance page. So just because I give Jon Toker access to general manager access, which is the top level, which allows you access to even turn off other people's accesses, that still doesn't give you access to 4 major components in 180 unless it's given to you. So that first and foremost can always be a bit of a problem. So, but when I go back to decision makers and what's happening and process, most of the times it seems, or many times it seems, I realize that the people I'm talking to may or may not appreciate accountability. Sometimes the people I'm talking to can not want the assessment merely because, as I've heard at a recent dealership I was at, that the initial impression was, well, we want to train our staff the way we want to train them. We don't need a consultant to do that for us. And that's not what I do, though. But the initial impression is, I'm going to show you how to do your business because you don't know how. No, not at all. What I'm going to do is show you, hey, you can see that Stephen, or John, I'll use you as the sales rep. John, on Saturday, you quoted 5 customers. You inputted 9. You have no follow-up today. And today's Wednesday. What are you doing with those customers? That's a very valid question. Any manager should be able to ask in 180 by a simple glance at one page. But if you don't know how that functions, then, again, how would you know? In your line of work, whether you have 180 and you use it or whatever system you do, everyone has processes for, or a chart where they want to know how many emails you got, how many customers you met, maybe phone calls you made, quotes you wrote, all that sort of stuff. The best part of 180 is it's such a massive ecosystem that I can pull up pages and start talking about your team very accurately, even though they don't function traffic, they don't function follow-up, they don't function anything in the system other than adding a vehicle to inventory, marking it sold, marking it delivered, and writing paperwork. But The system does far, far more than that. And it's not about teaching people what to do, just what you do and how to do it in 180 and make it super efficient. As I always like to say, you're only 3 clicks away from doing anything in 180, virtually. If you count like reports, then you have to add other clicks to mock up the report. But in 3 clicks, you should be able to email a customer, edit a customer, look at history, look at service history, look at lease finance renewal history. Again, 1, 2, 3. And there's other functions that are even shorter. But again, if you don't know how the wallpaper works and what's a link and how to filter, again, it gets a bit confusing. So.
Well, the thing I see in the dealerships that I had honor to visit and work with was I always like to sit down with the leadership team of the dealership, sales managers, GMs, you name it, and I said, so particular software such as like vAuto, right, as an example.
Yeah, great piece.
I'm like, are you guys comfortable using the tool? Oh yeah, I'm an expert. And I'm like, oh great. Why don't we look at your look to book report? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, your look to book report. Can you pull your look to book report? Let's see. And like, yeah, what was that? Could you show it to us? And I would go in and look at, oh wow, that's a pretty good tool. Then we go look at other tool, like another reporting system tells us if they have completed those appraisals for that report to work properly, and they haven't been completing it. And then we point it out, and all of a sudden that person thinks is they're expert at some certain process or product, is actually not. And that's why the third-party consultants is so important for any organization, because that consultant has been to 100 different organizations using that tool and talk to the vendor itself and get the best possible training from that vendor. So they really know what it is. And anytime I ask a question like, oh yeah, how comfortable are you with this? And as soon as I hear, oh, I know it inside out, and I know what I get myself into it. And it's just so interesting. And I don't get the idea of like, you got somebody coming in to assist you. Why are you making it an ego thing? Like, listen, I'm not there to make fun of you. Like, this is not high school hold up. I'm going to point fingers at you. I'm there to help you make more money. Like, that's all my reason for existence. And same as you, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And when I was doing installs years ago, replacing systems like Reynolds and Reynolds, perhaps for front-facing customer interactions, some teams didn't like it. They didn't like that you had to build everything in 180, and you had to have you didn't really have an ability to just add gross, right? That was a very common thing that could be done even in the business office. But you have 2 lines of gross in 180. You have sales gross, you have business office gross. You also have insurance as well. But parsing out that information is very easy. But I think what happens though is that on the surface, again, the software hasn't really had much of a change of look. So people think that some of the processes that really help them are really just surface processes that everyone should be using. And then when I dig a little bit deeper, I find that I want to make sure that people don't get overwhelmed. 180 is often referred to as 360 because you always end up back where you began. And the reason for that is most people use the back button. They don't know through features, I'll call them, because the buttons changed over time. There's a lot of software on top of software. People don't really know what OE is or how to use My Business to search customers, all that sort of stuff. All of that really just, unfortunately, is made even more, I guess you could say, difficult to appreciate when it looks so banal. It looks like you're booking a plane flight in 2004. It just looks like really plain. But most of the time, whenever I am with clients and they're taking a deeper dive, on one of my clients, Jamie Johnson, actually, he said the install compared to your 1 day of training, like their install was like, here's the keys to the space shuttle, have fun on the moon. And then someone like myself comes in and says, yeah, look at all the stuff you're missing. But unfortunately, we want to be sold the idea that we can get this done quickly and easily. We want to be sold the idea that a software company can make an app that will allow a customer to buy a car. We have so many solutions to problems we never had in this business that we have to sort through the storm of all of that and really get down to what we have. And I think a lot of dealerships still to this day, a lot of managers, salespeople as well, they don't realize what is in a CRM system and the power of their CRM system. and the seeds you can sow if you are diligent in that CRM system and its upkeep and all that sort of stuff. Curating the system is really what it is. It's a constant process. And although some people start rolling their eyes to that, whenever you have a problem, what do you look at? You look at the process, right?
Oh,
Your pre-owned manager doesn't know that for every vehicle, if they give it a number, they can just go to the trade page, put the number in, and just click approve, just so that the trade screen is approved. Now that's in your approval history. You'll never argue over it again. You should be building the trade appraisal as well, so on and so forth. There's a lot of trickle down effects. There's tons of blockchain. Well, I don't know what other terms you want to use about 180, but there's no reason why it can't be all connected. You should have your customers merged every day. I want to see that Jon Toker has spent actually $585,000 at our dealership in the last 7 years. Cool. Business opportunity there, isn't it? You should know as a team that I can search all the people that took winter tires 4 years ago as a business manager, maybe send them an email to say, hey, if you're up for winter tires or something like that. Obviously, now's not the time for winters. I get it. I'm just sort of like going into the breadth of things just off the top of my head that have come up many times with clients, and they don't think they can find it. But I'll show them the pages. It's right there. Unfortunately, though, sometimes people ask for that information and their login level doesn't allow that to happen. Or sometimes I go to do an assessment and their delivery schedule is 5 years old. So it's hard to show you a good one when yours is 5 years old, and like why it shouldn't be 5 years old. Teams will say, oh, we like all of our deliveries at the top of the month. I don't want them at the top of the month. There's no date. Your delivery schedule works on today's date and time on your laptop along with your calendar. If anything is before today, it's in delivery purgatory, as I like to call it. It should be at the bottom of the month. So anybody looking at the last day of the month, if it doesn't have a time, it's not booked. If there's a check mark on the right, it's in stock. Why do we have 21 cars in stock with 7 days left to go in the month? The month end is a figment of the car business imagination because you don't have process leading up to it. Simple as that. But, people don't like simple as that. People don't like experts either. People don't like training, and they want me to train salespeople in 5 minutes. So it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
you can't do it in 5 minutes? No?
Believe it or not, no. But there's an app for that. So just get them the app, and I'm sure they'll sell something.
Yeah. Here's the new app. That's the new thing. People want to buy cars sitting on their couch. They don't want to come to a car dealership, right?
Yeah, I know. Don't get
Nobody
me wrong.
wants to do interaction anymore.
Yeah. And also, we're training people not to have an opinion. I listened to a number of salespeople at a number of stores over the last few weeks, and I can hear them with their customer. And I'm like, well, now's the time for an opinion. How many Ks do you do? Like 30? Oh, so you should lease. That should be the answer if I'm at a store that has a decent lease agreement, because now that customer has no liability for 3 years. I ask sales teams all the time, what's the maximum mileage allowable at your lease department at whatever store? I know for me, I was shocked when I asked BMW at the time, it was 50K a year. You could bring back a 325 with 150,000 kilometers at the end of a 3-year lease. Hard to believe, but most teams don't ask those proper qualifying questions. If a customer says, I can't lease, I do 30K, they think that 24 or 25, whatever your term is the maximum. That's not the maximum. That's just our average, our stipulation. We can always add mileage. If you buy it now, many teams will, or many brands will allow you to keep the money after the fact. I think the way people explain that stuff to customers or have the confidence as a sales consultant to do that is what makes, the sales process so endearing to some customers. Some people want to avoid it. Who are those people? They're a small group of people. They're not that big. I see it at the dealerships all the time. You might start on a portal, eventually end up talking to the salesperson. If you want to talk on a portal about the lien on your car and the trade appraisal and all that sort of stuff, wow, that's going to be a very, 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 very long and inefficient conversation. And all conversations hopefully lead to an in-person interaction ultimately. So anyway, every team has a different way of running it. But what's important to me is that a sales consultant who uses 180 is allowed to quote, understands that they can find their lease portfolio whenever they want, that the team should have portfolio management set up so that they have annual delivery notifications, end of lease finance notifications. Just come up in their My Business as a lead that keeps generating. Very simple tool. Follow it, finish the list, and at the end of the day, your list should close because you've done everything. I did that in my entire career for 5 years. I think I split 2 deals with the coworkers because I was always on top of my stuff. And in the business, I still email people with no signature who ask me to call them. And it's just like, great, you have a number? That type of stuff. And little details to me are super important. The other day, I set up an auto magnet for a client so that when customers come in for service, we offer them a trade appraisal. Very simple little function. You use kind of like just general language. Don't make it too difficult. Basically, if you're not interested, don't respond to the email type thing. And I used their predetermined, I guess you could say, signature that I got in a previous email from them in Outlook. But one of the things they did was that they took the brand name, and the brand name was in the phone number, and they put it in the phone number. The problem is that when my phone gets that email, it doesn't recognize it as a phone number, and I can't just tap. I actually now have to dial that number. And this is one of those things about sending out a magnet campaign or an auto magnet. You have to get the details right. Any customer who spends $180,000 on a car to $80,000, big ticket, small ticket, they don't have to come back to the dealership. I can take your deposit over the phone. Happens all the time, right? But if the salesperson doesn't initiate that conversation with the customer in the early stages, it gets much harder. And that's where sales process comes in. So for me, I find that when you're looking at the overall sort of like makeup of like what we were talking about before, how the sales has changed and all that sort of stuff, every dealership's going to try something new, because they always will, because someone will come up with an idea on how to basically move more cars. And really, I just get the feeling that too many people are moving profits. And they're moving profits from some sales team members who seem to make a lot of money. And if we flatten that out and just sort of like flatten out all this stuff, we're not really paying attention to anything else. There's so many pieces of software out there that are going to do this for you. But the problem is that if you ask that software manufacturer who their focus group is it a car dealership or is it your customer? If it's your customer, let them sell to customers. It's just like a sales rep sending a customer a link to Auto Trader. Kind of a dumb move, because that's how I got my current car, but not through that salesperson. They sent me that car and I clicked search provincially, because Auto Trader makes software for cars, for people who own vehicles, not car dealers. Yes, they do that as well, and it's a fabulous system. But ultimately, when I start talking to my client, I stop with the email links. I stop. Everything is between you and I'm going to solve your problem. I'm going to create a solution for you. It's that whole, like sell me this pen idea. I just don't think people even understand what the rest of that is. And I think in this business, if you understand that and your team understands that and you have a great process from start to finish and not a democracy, you can have that. But a lot of teams, I don't think want to put that kind of, I'll say pressure. I like to say expectation and accountability to the team. And like I always say, one great thing about 180 as a system is that it gives everyone that power. When I input a customer, I can search all other customers and make sure they're not already in the system. But most salespeople will see Jon Toker come up and ignore it and write in a new Jon Toker. But Stephen would say, well, actually ask Jon Toker, hey, John, I see you're connected to so-and-so here in the system. Have you seen us before? No, actually, I don't remember. Oh, so you've never visited? I've never been here before. Did you maybe get a quote online? Oh, yeah, like a couple of years ago, I think I asked for a quote here. Yeah, that's why. So now I can just take that customer profile and carry on. I've also learned a little bit about my customer. Chances are you mentioned they're attached to someone else. That's my cousin. All right, well, if that's your cousin, you want to talk to them, they're here. Oh, yeah, for sure. Again, all that sort of data and analysis and stepped process is all embedded in 180. But unfortunately, if we don't follow or talk about that process and how we can maximize each and every moment of it, then yeah, we start to ignore things. A sales rep calls a customer, finds out they wrote off their vehicle or they sold it. They can go to the file and mark no longer owned. They won't be reminded about that customer again. But again, if they don't know to do that, if we don't know we have those abilities, then we don't know, and so we don't do. And then the software is errored. We pull up customers and this customer doesn't own their vehicle anymore, but they're coming up as owned. Well, if we don't curate the system, it can't curate itself, right?
Well, Stephen, I really appreciate you coming up on the show. I think this is a really useful information for dealers out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Before I wrap it up, any good closing stuff? How people can reach you? Anything you want to add?
No, thank you very much for having me on. I think it's great to have these one-on-one conversations. So it's great to be on. I hope to be on again as well. I know some people who also want to talk to you. So I know this is like the season finale but I think you could probably do a few more in a row here. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, they can always contact me via LinkedIn. It goes directly to my phone if that's where you're seeing this. And then on my LinkedIn, my contact information is under contact info, and you can go there, or find me via the website. I'm not too difficult to find. The last name is kind of narrows it down pretty quick. So, and I'm more than happy to do, of course, no charge assessments for clients, because again, I could probably guess at some things you probably could use a hand with. But again, it's a stepped process. We work one day. I give you some time to work on it yourself, and then come back in a couple of weeks. It's not. I always like to say my training isn't intensive. I'll probably intensively and quickly explain everything to you, and you might go, "Oh my God, it's a lot of info." That's fine. I want you to know what the process could be and sort of think about this stuff moving forward. If I moved at the pace of my clients, we wouldn't get too much done as far as just what we're working on that day, and then they don't know what we could be doing when I come back. So I always try to leave process guides, and hopefully they're followed, and as well touch base again with clients, asking them how their processes are working, and always have that sort of interaction, almost like a service department. I just want to make sure everything's running properly, and every once in a while I'll have a client say, "Hey, could you go in and just take a look at the system for me real quick and tell me what you think?" And now that's a great way to start with a lot of people. And like I say, I want to make it work for you and not tell you how to do it, just how to do it in your CRM system. And then at the end, you get accountability, which is, I think, good for everybody.
That's really good. Accountability is the key.
It is. Yeah, it is.
For our audience, if you guys missed this conversation, it is recorded live. You can watch it on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Also, you can listen to this conversation in your car, in your favorite podcast place. Again, I had Steven Pigozzo here with me today. And as you mentioned, this is the season finale, episode 19. Hope to continue this in the fall, probably. I just thank everybody for being a great audience and your support. And thank you, Steven, being on the show. And I wish you guys have a wonderful week and a wonderful long weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to the fall.